It's time to build an RTX 3070 and Ryzen 5600 based gaming PC build for 2021. In today's video, I'm going to run you through all the parts I chose and why, the build process from start right to the finish, and then boot this machine up to see how it performs in a load of the most popular AAA titles. Let's jump into it though after a quick word from today's video sponsor. This video is made possible by today's video sponsor, Antlion's Mod Mic Wireless. Antlion Audio is a global audio brand dedicated to improving consumers' communication experience, achieved by using Antlion's Mod Mic detachable boom microphones. You can use it with an existing pair of headphones or other wearable surface. The Mod Mic Wireless is a great way of using your high-end headphones as a headset to stay in touch with your friends while you're, say, gaming. Compared to generic headsets which tend to have poorer quality mics, the Mod Mic Wireless is crisp and clear. We're recording this voiceover on it right now, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Plus the fact it's wireless and attaches to nearly any surface means it's never been easier to get going, pack away safely or use for traveling, or simply move it out the way when it's not required. With 12-hour battery life, low latency, easy quick mute functionality and great sound quality, there's not much more to ask for. Upgrade your audio now with incredible audio from Mod Mic, the world's first ever attachable mics. Head to antlion.com/geeka or click the first link in the description below and use code GeekaWhat to get 15% off your order. As with all of the builds, we're going to kick things off by installing as many components into the motherboard as possible. This is the Asus ROG Strix B550F Gaming, and it's a great B550 motherboard. Not only is this a great looking motherboard, it's got Wi-Fi built in and supports our CPU choice today, which can easily be installed by lining up the golden triangle on the chip with the golden triangle on the motherboard socket. Lift the retention arm up, drop the CPU very gently into place, and that really is all there is to it. This Ryzen 5 5600X chip is brand new with 6 cores and 12 threads, and the best single-threaded performance on the market at this price point, which most of our games today are going to love. I'm going to couple the CPU up with 16GB of ADATA's Spectrix D50 RGB RAM. Any 16GB 3600MHz kit is going to work well, and is installed in this motherboard in the 2nd and 4th RAM DIMM slots. Simply slide the gold contact strip into the RAM DIMM slot itself and clip the RAM in from either side. Do the same for as many RAM DIMMs as you've got, in our case just the 2. We're also going to install our M.2 SSD, our storage drive today, before we move the motherboard and stuff into the case. Specifically, I've gone for this ADATA's Spectrix S40G. You can pick up a 1TB drive for pretty good value actually, and it's RGB, which is going to look awesome in our system today. In order to do this, we just need to remove the M.2 heatsink, and for this we need a teeny tiny little screwdriver. We are organized today, ladies and gents. I haven't got to go and find it, and you can just use this to actually remove the M.2 heatsink cover. These screws are more delicate than most of the screws we will uninstall today, so make sure you use a small screwdriver in all seriousness to protect them. We can then go ahead and slide the M.2 drive in. You may want to do this at a little bit of a 45-degree angle, and then we're just going to secure it down with a teeny tiny screw that's even smaller than the other screws, a little something like this. Oh dear. Finally then, the last step is actually to install the CPU cooler, and then we can go ahead and move this whole thing into our case today, which I'm really quite excited about. For the cooler though, I've gone for the Cooler Master Hyper 212 RGB Black Edition. The 5600X is a great CPU, but it does run just that little bit hotter than the 3600X, and as such, a cooler like this from Cooler Master is going to be a great choice. It's pretty simple. It's got a gunmetal grey heatsink, a 120mm RGB fan, and really, you can't ask for much more. In order to install the cooler, we want to take these included brackets, which go onto the bottom of the heatsink, as well as this included backplate, which is going to go through the rear of our motherboard and allow the cooler to clamp itself into place. Let's pop the backplate through first off. You can see that backplate now poking through the motherboard itself, and onto this, we're going to add these screws. And to begin with at least, these are going to stop the backplate from falling basically off the back of the motherboard. And those included brackets we talked about earlier are then just going to screw into the actual heatsink itself, one on this side and the other one on that side, a little something like this. Before we install the cooler, the last thing we need to do is just pop some thermal paste on the processor. You will get this included with your cooler itself, but I actually happen to have ran out, so I've got this fancy Cooler Master Master Gel Pro. What a name. Ooh. Ooh, this is weird. And then the cooler will screw in a little something like this. Take it one screw at a time, do it bit by bit, and make it nice and easy for yourself. Alright then, we can now go ahead and install that motherboard assembly into our case. But first, I need to go and grab it. Specifically, this is the case we have gone for. It's the Corsair 4000D Airflow. It's a great value airflow oriented case. And while it does lack a couple of RGB fans that you can get on the higher end model, it's got loads of airflow to keep our temperatures nice and low. This is one of my favorite cases of 2021. So much so, it's featuring in like a top case roundup video that's due out on the channel very soon. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on if you aren't already, so you never miss not only that video but any GeekaWhat upload. Polystyrene be gone, and all we really need to do then is just remove all of the case's side panels, including this one and this one. That makes the chassis super easy to access and allows us to install the motherboard. In this instance, all the standoffs are pre-installed in exactly the right places, so we simply want to go ahead and slide the motherboard in. The motherboard has a built-in rear I/O shield, so we haven't got to worry about that either, and the center raised standoff will hold it in place at least for a second. And then around the back of the case, you'll find this brown included box with all the screws we need to screw the motherboard into place. Fasten down the 8 standoffs a little something like so, and the motherboard is all installed. Alright then, with the motherboard in the case, we can now go in and install the graphics card after we've actually just popped the CPU cooler fan back on. I left this off to make screwing the motherboard in that little bit easier, so let's fix that now. Let there be RGB. Anyway, in terms of the graphics card, specifically this is the Asus TUF RTX 3070, and this is a great looking card with some really great performance figures and also availability pending, a really great value choice. Now, I know 30 series stock is still really rubbish, and you know, I really hope Nvidia can make more and more of these units. Some people in the comments get quite angry with me. It's like, nothing I can do, I'm sorry. But this is a great card, and when you can eventually buy them, I can absolutely recommend this in terms of 1440p and even 4K gaming at 60 to 100 plus frames per second. But hold out for the benchmarks on that one. Now, installing a graphics card's pretty simple. We need to line it up with the corresponding slot on the motherboard, in our case the top one, push the retention clip back, and then remove the relevant 2 PCIe covers. The graphics card is then going to slide into that PCIe slot and just clip into place. Use the same screws you use for your motherboard or thumb screws, they're both the same thread size, to actually go ahead and fasten the GPU into place. We're then going to go ahead and give this power and do the rest of the cables and the wiring for today's system. But I do have a trick up my sleeve, and that is these. These are Cooler Master's custom sleeved power supply cable extensions. They work with any power supply, and you can also buy some good options out there from Silverstone and other manufacturers, but I'll link those alongside all the parts today down in the description below for latest pricing and availability. I'm going to be coupling them with this power supply from Corsair, the CX650F. It's a fully modular 80 plus bronze certified power supply, and it has a bit of RGB, which is going to underglow our system really quite nicely today. As you can see here, the power supply extensions are already starting to go in. I think the GPU ones might have to go upwards to help prevent GPU sag and make sure today's build stays looking its best. The CPU ones don't need extensions though, because these are going to be firmly out of sight. You know what they say, out of sight, out of mind. And with that done, all that's left to do before we boot this machine up to see how it looks, and more importantly, exactly how it performs, is to install our front panel cables and wiring. I'll pop each of these on your screen now if you'd like to follow along at home, but I think it's about time we boot this system up, play some games, and do all that fun stuff. First though, roll the montage. Alright then, now we've seen just how good this system looks when it's all powered up, let's see exactly how it performs. On your screen now is a snapshot view with 15 of the latest AAA titles and our setting and frame rate results, so you can find your favourite game and see just how wow this system copes. I'm going to be taking a deeper dive into 6 of these titles in just a second, but if you'd like to see any of the full 10-minute gaming benchmark runs with all those frame rate numbers in all their glory, check out the playlist in the card section now on our new YouTube channel called Benched. Anyway, let's take a look at our focus titles today, kicking things off with GTA 5 and ending on Cyberpunk and Fortnite. The Grand Theft Auto 5 in-game benchmarking mode is a great way of testing any system. And I'm happy to report that here we saw 1440p high settings results of around 175 frames per second on average. You see really positive positive numbers for the 90 and 99th percentile results too at 168 and 160, and the game looked great. Watch Dogs Legions is next up today then. Once again, the title also looked absolutely fantastic at 1440p, very high settings with RTX off. 111 frames per second to be precise, tested in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode. Call of Duty's Cold War, specifically the Zombies mode, is next up today. And here at 1440p high settings, you're seeing an average of around about 151, with 90 and 99th percentiles of 142 and 138. Apex Legends is a personal favourite of, well, mine and everybody, and at 1440p with our unlocked frame rate in the Origin launcher, we saw some great results. High settings gave us 190 frames per second on average, with 145 and 140 for the 90 and 99th percentile results. Unfortunately, a game that doesn't give you quite such high frame rates is Cyberpunk, but it's still a really nice title to play, and this machine performed really well. 1440p at high settings, we're looking at 82, 66 and 48 frames per second, which is actually not a bad result. And tuning things down to 1440p at 1080p high settings, we saw 96, 69 and 57. So here, 1080p is definitely going to be the better resolution for you high frame rate gamers out there, but it could definitely still hold its own at 1440p. Fortnite is a pretty similar story, first tested at 1440p high settings with RTX off and DLSS enabled with Nvidia's Reflex technology set to on, and here you get 175 FPS on average. Tuned down to 1080p and the frame rate kind of skyrockets really at both high and competitive settings. 1080p high saw 196 FPS on average, and 1080p low, so competitive settings with everything tuned down but the render distance set to far, sees 246 FPS. That's 246 frames per second on average in Fortnite, which is ridiculous. And with that being said, that pretty much wraps it up for not only the gaming benchmarks today, but for the whole video. If you enjoyed it, you know what to do. You give it a big old like rating. Make sure to get subscribed if you aren't already. Thank you for watching, and as always, we will see you in the next one.